This morning, we're diving into the topic of opioid use disorder and really the recovery process behind that. Kate Richards is a program manager for the Caring Recovery Opioid Treatment Program at Eskenazi Health, joining us now to talk more about this. And we're very deliberate on the use of those words, opioid use disorder, as opposed to opioid addiction. And why is that?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's really important, the words that we choose, because of the stigma around opioid use disorder. There's a lot of thought that, it's a choice or a moral failing. And so when we reframe it as an opioid use disorder, we acknowledge it for the chronic disease that it is. And when it's a disease, it's something that we can provide treatment to and have success in recovery.
Let's talk about what that disease is and really how sometimes these things happen.
Yeah, so what we know is that opioids change the brain when they're prescribed for, like pain management or something. The whole design is to change, how the brain is feeling. And so when somebody becomes dependent on an opioid through, various means, their brain changes, and it really depends on that opioid to feel good and eventually to not feel sick. When you don't have access to the opioid, the body itself has a reaction that's pretty unpleasant. And so the disease itself really takes over the brain and the entire body for the individual dealing with it.
You mentioned earlier some of those stigmas and misconceptions about opioid use. Let's talk about those and really how maybe those might be barriers sometimes when it comes to getting treatment.
Yeah, so what we know is about 73,000 Hoosiers experience opioid use disorder, and that stigma that, makes you a bad person or it's a choice that you're making despite the negative consequences can really prevent people from seeking treatment. And treatment itself carries a little bit of stigma that you're not maybe strong enough to deal with this disease on your own. And so, those barriers really prevent people from addressing a disease that has negative consequences up to death.
Yeah. How much of that sometimes can even be denial or confusion? Maybe you don't even understand that you're in that addicted or disordered place at that point.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, first acknowledging that, that they're struggling with something and how it's impacting their life is a big step. We know that it can take people years to really acknowledge the impact that an opioid use disorder is having on their life. So I think that definitely plays a part, which is why it's so important to Sandra Eskenazi that we meet people, where they are, even if they're not quite ready to move towards sobriety, that we're still a warm place for them to land and explore what recovery might look like for them.
What does that look like? And I know recovery is different for every person, obviously, but that process of getting to that point.
Yeah, so at the opioid treatment program specifically, we have open access, which I think is great. So Monday through Friday, people can walk in and say, I'm interested in opioid treatment and, methadone maintenance, and we will have them see a clinician that kind of goes through their history and provides them with a diagnosis, and then they'll see a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner to begin methadone maintenance, and then it really varies from there. They have access to a clinician for counseling, a care coordinator for case management and life skills things, and then probably my favorite thing is we have peers or people who are in sustained recovery themselves who kind of talk people through that process and what life can look like on the other side of opioid use disorder.
That's so important because it can be a very scary process when you're in that, and very daunting to look at it and go, I'm never going to get out of this. And a lot of people feel that, but when you see someone who's been through it, it gives you that little oomph sometimes to get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if any of us think about a major change that we've tried to make, it is daunting and it can seem overwhelming and sometimes impossible. And so I think when you can look in the face of somebody that says, hey, I did this step by step, it really is encouraging.
Yeah. Very important conversation. Kate, we appreciate your time and coming and chatting with us. We really
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
If people want to reach out and get a hold of you, is there an easy way to do that?
Yeah, so they can, like I said, they can stop by. We're actually open 7 days a week over at 3419 English Avenue, or they can call our Access Center 317-880-8491.
Awesome. Kate, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yeah.